Hello everybody and welcome back to Wappelville. This is going to be kind of a unique live session. Hopefully it's going to be one of a few live sessions. So this right here, and I'm going to see if this thing doesn't work, I'm just going to actually get this out of the way because that's just going to be in the way. This is a Kickstarter that just began yesterday morning, I want to say. Well, more like Sunday morning because it's not Monday anymore. Nifty little Hydra right here. It is resin. The pieces I can say right now are actually pretty easy to locate. Each neck has a letter designation. The head goes with the neck, so it's easier than other Hydras that I've had to put together, which is really cool. Now, what I did do was I filmed the basing episode here. So that's actually going to be available for the patrons of the Patreon page. Pretty nifty. And I'll show you some of these pieces. All of this stuff is from Green Stuff World. Texture roller here. We've got some of these little resin pieces like this. We've got some flaming skulls. There are some other things. I believe this spear is from the Reaper bit set. We got some GW skulls out here too. And this is a texture sheet right here. And let's grab some of the stuff here. We'll talk about so here's your Flaming Skulls again from Green Stuff World. We've got the GW skulls right here. See those guys. And then we'll talk about these pieces right here. Now I just used some of the Aztec ones on my Lizardman army that I just filmed. That was another army painting series, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I wanted to show you this right here. So here's the texture roller. Yeah, you can see how that matches up right there. I've got a ton of tutorials on how I use this, even on the blog, and that's going to scroll across the bottom of the screen. You can check that out too. So it's sort of a Greco-Roman theme, to say the least. And here are some of the other resin pieces. I just want to show you these to lead off. So you can see the little bit of the texture roller there, but also some broken columns and some other fun stuff. Now, see these flaming skulls? The whole idea behind those is to let me do some object source lighting on our Hydra. And for that, we are going to use a little bit of this right here. I've been using this in some of the recent tutorials. Alright, well, apparently the chat does not want to work, so let's see if we can get this going here. There, maybe that's better. Or not. We're just going to have to do this the hard way, so bear with me while we do this here. Because it's a lot easier for me to see the chat. This is supposed to happen automatically, but whatever the Windows 10 updates were, they completely messed around with that. So that was not very fun. So we'll just do this and see if that actually works here. There we go. That's a little bit better. Now let's get our little transparency working. Oh, hey there, Rope. How's it going? Yeah, this is actually going to be a series of live sessions because, well, this is kind of complicated. There's a few things going on here. But what I wanted to do is at least give people an idea of how I start something like this and then progress through it. We are going to use, for the most part, our ProAcryl Transparent again. Oh, Chris Cave, I just... it's interesting. Okay, now it shows up. So I'm going to make my window a whole lot bigger here so I can see this. Oh, sorry, it's another work day for you. I'll try and do these at a different time too, so maybe... Well, hopefully not in the middle of the night for you, though. So, got about 8 transparents, right? Yellow, red, orange, green, blue, purple. But this this has been the most amazing fluorescent paint that I've seen yet, pretty much. And what we'll do is we're going to use that to do some glazing over the top of this, and it's going to actually work an awful lot like the way I do with the contrast paints. And I've been doing these, about the last week or so, comparing contrast paint to things like the Reaper clears and liners that I normally use, but also with the contrast paints. Okay, I'm just going to get some of my, again, these are just simple craft brushes right here, nothing fancy at all. We'll talk about those as we go along. The advantage of these transparents versus, and that's what's in here, the contrast paints. Here, let me move that down a little bit. You can see those little watercolor bins right here. You can use water to thin the transparents. Not necessarily the best thing to do with the contrast paints. Now look at this reference. It's down in the lower right hand corner. See that purple theme right there? On the lower left hand corner you have the actual painted one that they had, but let's show you this one right here. So you can see we've got some grays, some blues, but you see you've got that little bit of object source lighting on the underside. We're looking to do something like that. Every so often I'm going to bring that picture up, but let's just get started here. Let's throw some glazes on this. Now we've got black here, purple, blue, green, yellow, red, orange, that's transparent brown. But we also have a few opaques. We have ivory here, and that's faded ultramarine over there. Everyone knows, who knows me, just the power of the faded ultramarine blue. It is just very potent. We love it. And I'm looking at you, Nestor. Yes, you know you love it. Let's just start to throw some glazes. We'll start with the heads here. And you're going to notice that this, in many ways, is going to work like a contrast paint. And you can see I got myself a couple of different colors here, so I can switch back and forth a bit. So you can see we got some purple going on here. We got some blue. Now one thing I am going to do is I'm just going to mess around with my YouTube thing over here just to make sure that we're not missing out on the chat, because for whatever reason in the new world of YouTube nothing works. Because believe me, there's some live streamers that I watch and they have 1 million plus subscribers, and that their technological issues over the last 2 weeks have been wow. So just bear with me if there are things of a technological nature here that go awry. That's just between, I think, that new Windows update really, apparently it messed with more than XSplit because, oh my gosh, everybody's having all kinds of weird things happen. I'm going to turn my brightness back up to where it normally is. Sometimes at the start, I knock that down a little bit. See, look at this. It doesn't even have to be just the transparent, because I've mixed a little bit of the faded ultramarine in there, and we'll just have that work its way down. Kind of using gravity in my favor here a little bit, or at least I hope I am. And we're just going to let some of this do its own thing. So we're back into our blue mix here. And I usually refer to this as a shaded base coat. It's not really shaded and it's not really a base coat. It's kind of a little bit of each. I'm just going to make sure my focus is there. This thing is bigger and wider than what normally sits on my workbench here as I'm painting. So if there's some unusual angles here, you'll just have to forgive that. And you're seeing a little bit more of my work area too than you normally would. So we'll just kind of let that sink down into the crevices. It's a lot like what contrast paint does, but on the plus side you don't get quite so much of that pooling. If I wanted to, I could go in with my makeup sponges and take some of it away. I tried doing that with contrast paints and just weird stuff happened. It was, yeah, some really weird stuff happened. Now these early stages, this is for folks that are new to this, it doesn't really look like a whole lot. It just looks like me laying down dark colors, maybe even some if I take some of it away to maybe bring back some of the lighter primer, which is Badger Stynylrez, by the way. But there's an awful lot of freeform stuff that happens here. Stuff is allowed to mix. It's allowed to do a lot of things on its own. We're not doing this thing where we prime it black and we paint one tooth on one head. We're approaching this as much as an entire sculpt as we can. We work on it in its entirety. We're not going to just take little isolated areas and work on those. And the freehand, well, if there was freehand, we do that too. But the object source lighting happens as early as possible. And I'm going to show you I'm going to bring up a bunch of different examples here. I have a whole series of Reaper figures that I did. Here, let's get this one right in here. Use the same fluorescent, actually a lot of the same colors we're using here. Virtually the same stuff. But that object source lighting, that was laid in as soon as possible. I mean, literally as soon as possible. Did not dilly-dally, didn't just kind of dance around the edges. We said, nope, we're going right into this, baby. So here I took a little bit of the black, mixed it in with the purple. I will, on occasion, I think, take some of the blue, mix it with the black. Because every single head, it's not going to be exactly alike. We are going to change colors along the way, because it just wouldn't really be that way. Not even your skin color is that consistent across your entire body, and you got one head. Or at least most of you do. Now, let's see. Chris says, looking forward to trying out some of the ProAcryl paints, aside from Faded Ultramarine. There's some other go-tos. I actually like whatever the yellow is called, and I know we had a lot of meetings with creature casters. These were being developed, and they weren't necessarily satisfied with their yellow. They thought it could cover more. It's like, really? That covers a lot. I mean, it really covers well. So I like that one an awful lot. There's a few of the other ones. Now I've got several live sessions with just the ProAcryls. A lot of them even before there were transparent paints. So you can check those out. Some of them are live sessions. Some of them are actually recorded videos. There's the burnt umber I really like. That's a fun one. Actually, light umber is really, really fun too. I think there's a burnt red that I enjoy. Essentially, what would you say? They're closer to regular artist colors. And just in general, you'll notice that the names are, more like art colors as opposed to White Scar's white and Blood Angel's red. Now here we changed it again. This is the black and the purple. See, it kind of grays that down a bit. Remember, this is all we're trying to do is get the primer out of the way. We're just trying to get that covered as soon as possible. And you're looking at mostly the sandy color here. This is the Stynylrez primer from Badger. I did that through the airbrush, but you will be actually, in the not too distant future, you'll be seeing me painting some Warcry, the Splintered Fang, where we took just a brush like this and brushed the primer on, and actually did do sort of that faux zenithal stuff. I know I did it for the Rohan Army painting series. That was a lot of fun, and I got to be down and dirty with the primer. I think I had the kind of the reddish brown. I had the greenish kind of camo type color. Again, kind of a black and purple theme over here. And as I push this way, it's going to actually be a little more blue. I think that'll be fun. This is the kind of thing that I can do. I don't know. It's a bit of like a notation. Like you're sketching in a sketchbook, and you're making some notes along the way. And as I'm doing this, I noticed that as I was going over here, it just got more blue. So I'll continue that. Maybe on this side, we're going to go more with the purplish type colors, but you can see I throw a little bit of that faded ultramarine in there. Look what it does. A little bit's going to go a long way. All of the opaque colors, they cover. I mean, they really, really cover. Oh, Rope says light ProAcryl colors are great because they made you think, well, how's that? Great minds think alike. And we just did right there. So again, the whole idea is to get this covered, but also start to think about what's happening in the future. And like I said, the nifty thing about the ProAcryls, just in general, that they do not mind being thinned down just with water. Sponges, let's do something like this so that I don't end up with an edge there. It's just a makeup sponge. I got hundreds of these from Amazon. Here, I'll just sop that up and let's move on along. This is actually it's what used to be a Secret Weapon miniatures of crushed glass snow, but the snow's all gone, and I'm just using the jar and some simple blue tack on the jar. No big deal, nothing special. Now let's just do something right here. So we're gonna get some different colors on the tail here. We'll extend it down a bit. And while this is still wet, I get a little water to extend that out here. I'll go back to that makeup sponge, like so. And we'll take some away. Not as much as we did before. Let's see how it starts to reveal the shadows and the lights. I mean, we could do that here on the heads too. Obviously, you don't want the paint to dry if you're going to do that, but that was not the intention. Now remember, we're looking for blue over here on this side. You can see how often I clean the brush, which is virtually never. It's kind of the same when I do oils. I know it can drive people nuts, but I suppose that's just the 2D. That's just the 2D artist in me coming through. I am going to grab a little bit of purple, though. I had to decide, do I want that purple glow coming out of their mouths? I just thought that could be kind of interesting, maybe a little different. Because why paint your Hydra the way every other Hydra in history has ever been painted, with the typical kind of white chest, right? Green scales or skin or whatever. Maybe we're gonna go a little different on that. I saw that one reference picture there. That's different. It would also make a nice, what would you say, contrast to the flame. I actually have magenta fluorescent. I don't know if I want, see, that's more of a purple type color. So that, let's see. I think scale 75 does more of a purple fluorescent. Let's see if I can't make one out of what I've got. Those, what was that? The golden acrylics heavy. I have actually now a jar of blue on the way here. I ordered that today. Not quite sure when that's going to get here. Not quite sure. And I will show you also at a certain point here. I'll show you the footsore Kickstarter. I've got a scene with the Kickstarter website all ready to go for you. And just also a quick little shout out here for Aaron and Liz. Some fellow miniature painters. Aaron also, like me, does a lot of the miniature painting instruction, and they didn't have the most nifty day today. That crazy thing on the highway coming back from LVO, and the vehicle they were driving is about half the size it was when they started, so just glad that they were okay, but wishing them well as they try and recover from that. So you can see how we've shifted a little bit more. You can really see it there, the difference between these two. We got almost more intense purple here, kind of a lighter purple. Then we've got the black and purple here, so it's shifting as we go across from one head to the next. And believe it or not, you'll notice that a little bit less as our object source lighting gets on there. Now, you'll have to forgive sometimes when the palette camera gets moved, because that thing is about 1/4 of an inch away from the Hydra's heads every time I put the thing here to paint it. So if you hear a sound of something tapping against something, well, that's the Hydra bashing up against my palette cam. Yeah, I'm just getting a little bit of the black in there, and now I'm going to look at this. I'm just going to take some purple here. We're gonna make his head 2 colors. It's not enough that he's got all these heads. We're making all the heads different colors. And we'll continue here. You can see we're emphasizing these darker tones until we sit here and grab a little bit of our faded ultramarine and then work that into, again, the chest here. And the intent, again, is to do this over multiple episodes, because even for me, this would be a lot to paint in one session, even for me. Heck, it's going to take a decent amount of time just to paint that base, and I will periodically show you that base again, because sometimes new folks come in and that sort of thing. Alright, while that is actually still wet, I'm going to keep going here, because in case I bump into that, it's going to give me a chance to, it's going to take some water and wipe that out. Let's see, we got a nice big old brush here. Nice big old brush, letting this paint flow. Now that head right there, it's interesting. It's probably going to catch a fair amount of the object source lighting, just because of where it's at. It's just that much closer to it. Alright, we'll just keep these colors coming in, letting that darker tone settle in. Oh, I think here I might even go with more of a little more of the black seep in there to kind of let the scales in the back just get nice and grayed down. But you can see this is about the level of shading that you would get. Let's say if you had used some contrast paints. Now that I'm at basically this stage here, this is the shyish purple. So that's the contrast. And let's compare and contrast. Alright, that kind of goes on about the same, doesn't it? So now we've shifted real quick over here to shyish purple. And by the way, I've mixed the contrast paints with the shyish purple. I've mixed, or with the ProAcryls. I've mixed them with the Reaper stuff. I'm going to do that right now. Shyish purple, a little bit of transparent black, mixes in together, and it goes down into the crevices. The consistency, I would say the ProAcryl stuff's a little bit thicker, which is why I can sit out here on the palette, contrast paint, that's why that goes in those little bins up there, because that just would kind of run all over the place. And you can now see here, look at this. See, I'm getting more of that pooling there. You just don't see that as much with the ProAcryl. Same thing goes for, let's say, the Reaper Clears. That's why I love those so much. Here, I'm not really all that worried because we're either going to have the object source lighting there or maybe reflecting some of the floor colors on that. Now here, I'm just trying to get my brush stuck in here. I know you can't really actually see any of that, so it's another benefit of having the big old brushes there. Now, I'm just going to let that dry for a moment or two, and let's head over here. I believe here's our Kickstarter. So you can see our Hydra. You can see they got kind of the greenish blue heads and the classic chest colors there. You can see the round base that it's on. And Mortal Gods Mythic, so from Footsore Miniatures. Okay, let's get rid of one of these chats here, because there's just too many. So I'm going to kill this one right now. That's a little better. Not quite sure why a second one showed up. I think we got pretty much everything covered there. Now base is going to come back out. And as I pointed out, we have all of these flaming skulls right here, which means it's going to generate some light on our Hydra, and his chest, if you want to call it that, goes pretty much right up to the edge here. We also have another one over there. We got some here. Try to kind of do a bit of a, 170 degree-ish arc worth of lighting effects. Speaking of that, I'm going to throw some of this out here now. And again, I got to let that dry a little bit. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to get my water out of the way and give myself a little space to work. So that is, you think any orange is intense, nothing as intense as the fluorescent paints. In fact, they're usually so intense the camera loses track of them. It has a real tough time. Real tough time. So here's another instance of, so this is actually another live episode that I did that is from Creature Caster as well. And here, let me show you some more of the skulls here. Again, another live session that we did. So here's our flaming skulls. You can see how that casts the light on him. If you watch this live session, you'll see one of the almost the first things I did was establish the lighting effects on there. And we're not going to go really with the smaller brush or anything like that. There's no point in that. This is the one time I will actually try to clean out the brush a little bit here. Now you can see this is much more watery than what I used to use, and I still do. So this is from Vallejo here. Let me see if I can get some of this out of here. Okay. Now this is much more thick by comparison. Now that I actually have to shake that up. But yeah, in general, some fluorescents are going to be more thin than others. So I just took some of the clear red or ProAcryl Transparent red. We're going to make ourselves a few different oranges here. And now that we've got our darks in place, look at this. See how it doesn't entirely cover that? That's pretty much a trademark of all fluorescent paints. But of all the fluorescents, this, even when it's this transparent, still covers well enough to make an impact. So this, all we're doing now, I'm just going to block in. That's all we're looking to do. So this head is definitely going to get some source lighting on it. This is going to pick up a little bit. We are going to certainly do some on the chest here, but really focus on the parts that are pointed downwards for obvious reasons. Now when this thing goes on the base, I'll probably make some changes to that because, well, I can't see the base right now. I think I can go about to there. We've got some more to do here. And all this is just kind of marking this down, saying, okay, where would some be? We wouldn't have a whole lot there. You can see we're starting to do, especially focusing on the undersides here. It's more fun, I would say, than just having the usual light-colored chest. Here, I can even take some more of this away. Remember, all we want to do, we just want to figure out which of these heads gets about how much object source lighting here. So you can see we can fade that down. Also have to think about the object source lighting casting some shadows, because that's what it does, right? It's being lit after all. Yeah, let's get the side of that maybe a little bit more. A little bit more there. Look at that. So you can see it does not take long. Let's see if I can't zoom in just a touch more. Aha. Gonna have to adjust my focus, so give me a second to do that. And we will now a couple more of these. And I'm gonna assume that it, scaly, probably a shinier, somewhat more reflective surface. Not incredibly reflective, but somewhat more reflective. So see here, we're just gonna just gently brushing in a little bit of those lighter colors. We haven't done anything else. We haven't done any kind of highlights with the purples or whatever. We just jumped right into the object source lighting as soon as possible. Because what happens, and again, if you've heard me preach this before, oh, it's just a reminder. When you paint an entire miniature and you try to sort of superimpose your object source lighting later on, you will be intimidated and you won't want to do it because you don't want to, and it's always the dreaded thing, I don't want to mess it up, which means AKA you'll never do it because you've already convinced yourself that it's too hazardous, too dangerous, and it's not worth doing, and you've already convinced yourself that it can't work. Now, let's say I didn't really like the orange. Heck, I could just paint some purple over this real quick and make it green if I wanted to. Or I could just get rid of the object source lighting altogether. Wouldn't take all that long. In fact, it would just take a minimal amount of time. And that's the reason why I try to get this kind of lighting stuff going sooner rather than later. And you'll notice that I chose a darker color to have this object source lighting go on top of. I know I've seen people, and pretty much almost every other live session that I do has object source lighting in it. So we talk about this all the time. The phenomenon where the light, the so-called light, is actually darker than what's supposed to be getting lit up. And you say, well, wait a second. What's going on there? So you have this sort of light-colored robe, and then you have what's supposed to be lighting on it, and it is quite literally darker than the robe. That just doesn't make any sense. So what do you have to do? You have to, in a way, artificially manipulate the figure. Oh, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, it is. I can't wait for the blue stuff to show up because I did, what the heck is he called? Red Skull or whatever. And he had that blue box, and I was still using the Vallejo fluorescent blue on that. Okay, so now I can I'm going to shift to a slightly smaller one of my craft brushes here, but also maybe a little bit more of the fluorescent orange. And just remember, we haven't used any yellow or anything like that to lighten it. We're still in the darker stages of our lighting. But you can see where it's closer, we're going to start to bring out the light a little bit more. Especially down here. And I'm not going to be worried about any kind of brush marks or whatever at this point, because, like I said, we haven't done anything else. All we're doing is sketching out where that lighting is supposed to go. And actually, if you already have pledged to the Kickstarter there, well, the Mortal Gods Kickstarter, well, you'll be getting links to this. So hopefully the link is established pretty soon, and you'll be able to see this. And like I said, this will be a few episodes, at least 2, maybe 3, kind of depends. I think the base is something that I'm just going to film. That'll be, like I said, a Patreon video there. It's a little bit easier that way. The live sessions, they do have it's a very different feel to it. Did you find a site? Yeah, Dick Blick had it. Actually, Dick Blick has the entire collection. Now, the vast majority of the ones they point you to are the giant $21 containers, not quite so much the smaller ones like you and I have, which I think is 1 fluid ounce or whatever is the size that you and I have. And see, I haven't added any of the fluorescent yellow to it, because there's fluorescent yellow. I haven't added any of the ProAcryl more opaque yellow to it at all. I think you can already, what are we, 10 minutes into this? Well, half hour. A lot of that was talking about other stuff. And just pretty much laying down purple paint everywhere. And even now you can see this is the straight up fluorescent paint here, and you can see the effect that already has. We have added no opaqueness to it, no opacity, not even any yellow. Because remember, the skulls on the base, those are emitting the light. So I can't go too crazy here on this just yet. Not quite yet. It's all about that context. And you're going to hear me use that word an awful lot. We're still even going to do basically glazes of red and mixed with the fluorescent, but those other ones that I showed you, and again, periodically, I'll bring those back so you can see them. Again, that palette cam is really darn close. So we'll get a couple of areas here that are sort of underlit. Yeah, let's get this part of his chest, although potentially that would be blocked from some of the object source lighting. I'm going to go back to the slightly darker mix here. And all this is, it gives me much more flexibility later on. But let's say it's too much when I get to the skulls, right? Now, if this was me just doing my regular unfilmed work, I would be painting the base at the same time. It's just not super practical trying to do that in a live session or whatever. I try to simulate as much as possible kind of a normal working environment, as opposed to, well, let's set up some special thing. Because that doesn't really give you the best hint of how this all works. It can give you, well, a false impression. And I've seen it where, okay, you've got things set up for the camera, but in real life, when it's actually being done, it's entirely different. I try to keep those as much in line as I can. So again, you can see where we're trying to pick up right in this area here. Here, let's do a bit more here, and I'm going to use that natural transparency in my favor. I'm just barely brushing that on. You can see why I didn't get too crazy about the colors painted on the chest when I was doing the initial glazes, right? I mean, why bother? Because I knew this was going to be happening over the top of it. Here, let's get a little bit of reflection now on the underside of the eyes here. And all we're trying to do, just trying to get how far do we want this to go? And this has really got to be the uppermost reaches of our object source. As much as I'd like to have it just be insane everywhere, that's just going to get to be too much. Now, what about here? See, I'm thinking that this part of the chest blocks this, but what I will do then, let's take some of that away. Yeah, take more of it away. And I'm just feathering that brush stroke on. It's not a dry brush at all. I'm just trying to use the natural transparency in both the ProAcryl Transparent and my fluorescent paints, which are massively transparent. Or translucent, sometimes I kind of use that word instead. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit more here in the way of some lighting here on his tail, which is pretty much the closest thing. So I'm going to add a little touch of that's the transparent yellow in there. It's not going to make it any more opaque, but it shifts it away from the reddish side of things. Now again, I could add, oh, what the heck. Okay, we'll put a tiny bit of opaqueness to this now. And believe me, a little bit of the opaque ProAcryl colors, they go a long way. Let's get a little more of our yellow here. There we are. And like I said, this really is going to be on the lowest, your lower heads, on the neck and the chest. Not really much past that. I see we got to hit this. I mean, look at just that little bit of the impact that had right there. So got to be judicious with it. Now you can see it. Now this is a complex shape right here, so there's gonna be times I can't, no matter what, I can't quite get it to where you can see what I'm doing, because otherwise I can't see. And if I can't see, not a whole lot's gonna happen. Here, let's work in a little more. Of our lighter version down here, and remember you can always glaze over the top too, tone it down. Now, some of the references that I would see, and look at it, look at the difference that makes right there. The heads or the necks had that sort of a membrane that kind of goes down the center. The here it's more of the, it is sort of a kind of the older style of sculpting, something like the hydras there. Maybe a little less like a dragon. Here I'm going to, on this neck here on the underside, try to get a bit lighter. That might be too much, so guess what? I take some of the paint away, and that did it. That just about did the trick there. And there's, believe it or not, there are parts of this I'm going to actually go back in with some darks too. And I said all of this I still consider it a preliminary phase. Now these heads in the back, there is no way, at least at this point, I think they should be getting any of the brighter object source lighting colors. So we're just going to leave those be for now. Just going to leave those be, because we got some, now there's some more questions that'll come up, as in, well, all right, what are we going to do for this part here? What happens there now? And that's what we have to determine. Here, let's get a little bit of the more of the reddish orange to wrap around the skin there, because that's why I tried to have the flaming skulls in as many places of the base as possible, so that there would be even more opportunity to do stuff like this. How about over here? Nope, that is definitely away from our lighting source, or light source, however you want to call it. Let's see, what else do we want to do with our orange here before we start to get into possibly doing another. Do I want these things to have a glow? That's going to be the question. Like that reference down in the corner there. If I'm going to go with these darker heads here, how many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 open heads. Before we do that, though, here let's start working on some lighter tones on the other side. So you say I can go with that's the faded ultramarine. We got some of the blue. It's got some of the black mixed in there. And what we're going to start to do is maybe see what we want to do for midtones, because we're not looking for highlights here, we're looking for midtones. What's a midtone? Think of a value scale. 1 is the lightest, 10's the darkest. Middle tone's going to be somewhere in that 4 to 7 range. And that's what we're at right here. That's probably about a 7 or so as far as level of, say, darkness goes. Most of the interesting things that happen as far as the shape of your miniatures tend to be in those midtones. I think people, they focus on stuff like the highlights, right, and the shadows. We need highlights and shadows. And now fortunately in art school I had a teacher who was really obsessed with midtones. He's like Captain Midtone. And he really, really, really stressed what you can do in just the midtones. That is actually, that's the part that's going to give you more interest. what would you say, the shadows and highlights, that's sort of the nuts and bolts, or that's the studs, the steel studs or whatever, or the wood studs, and then your midtones, that's your drywall, that's your wallpaper, whatever, your windows, that's your more decorative stuff that you're going to hang over the top. So I'm going to go over here and make sure that the chat is still okay, it's still keeping up. Every so often I just got to check it. It's what's happening with YouTube these days. Now, you can see I just shifted a little bit more towards purple there. And I got none of this. It's meant to be a highlight whatsoever. It is also not a dry brush. You can see, look at that, we're practically wet blending that together. You don't get that with a dry brush. You get that with a wet brush, but you also get it with a nice big old filbert type shape like that. See, I can still pick up some of the sculpted in texture, but I can still blend along the way. Now there's again more of the bluish type of color there as we work on this side of our, almost called him a dragon. What are we doing here? We'll keep on. We'll continue with our mix that's shifted more towards the blue here. So what are we at? Really, we've been painting on this thing for about 40 minutes tops. And it went from just primer to this. And I'm fairly sure that in the next hour plus or whatever, there would be folks that say, hey, if that was the result that I had, they would be fine with that. They call it done. They'd say, yep, I am good with that. So I'm going to look at taking a little more of my faded ultramarine. Again, I got my filbert brush shape. Start to add some more lights here. But it keeps that grayed down. See, it's still very grayed down. And the faded ultramarine, believe me, that is not white. In no way, shape, or form is that a very light color. But it kind of looks that way. It's giving you the impression that it's lighter. Why is it doing that? Well, because we made sure to get our darks in place straight away. Now let's do a little bit of this here. We're going to take, that's our purple mix there. Look at how intense that gets. So what do? We take some black, even a touch of blue, get that toned down. Let's do some more of this on the head here. Oh, Aerox Minis. Oh, good afternoon to you. What is it here? It is 2:53 a.m. here. Hopefully it has not been it's been a productive Monday well, now it's Tuesday. Even here it's Tuesday. Heck yeah, you're closer to Wednesday than we are. So again, a little more on the purple side there. Just letting this migrate from the blue on one side to a little bit more on the purple to the other side. Even on some of the same heads here, a little bit of purple there. Where we originally had the blue. And I'm going to probably doing some darker glazes over the top of this. Who knows, I might even paint some markings on there. Yeah, the classic sort of spots type of deal there. We might do something like that. What I might do is, heck, I might even grab some of the Vallejo. Oh, look at that. There's a big old scar where his eye is supposed to be there. That's interesting. Didn't notice that. Like I said, this is from it's from Footsore Miniatures. It's part of their Kickstarter, Mortal Gods, I believe. But we're gonna double check. I'll take you there in a bit again. Yeah, so there, more of a blue here, more of a purple. Then on the back here, maybe more of a gray. So that means we're going to take the faded ultramarine and just some of the transparent black there, which is really more, it's more of a charcoal gray. It's definitely not straight up black, because just black by itself is dead. There's just nothing to it. That's why usually I take blue and brown, mix those together to make something that's like a black. See, I might do tempted to actually do the back, I don't know, scales, fins, whatever you would want to call that, and actually a darker tone maybe. Yeah, let's have even more, yeah, a little more of the darker tone in there. So this is where the shyish purple was. We use that as the contrast paint there. But now actually putting a little bit of this gray over the top. It tones it down, but we can still see some of what's underneath. We'll extend this out. Again, this stuff that's on the interior here, you're going to have a real tough time seeing any of that, so we're not going to focus in on that a whole bunch. And this will be an unusual one here because it's going to be painted over probably multiple live sessions. For obvious reasons, because he's got a whole bunch of heads. Now maybe some Greek hero comes along and chops them off, but, well, that's not going to help either. They'll just grow back. So in our more of the faded ultramarine here as we start to work a little bit lighter. And now I see we've reached the point in the program where YouTube says you have 0 viewers. So yeah, whatever, boy. I mean, I'm no fan of Windows updates, but this one, not a fan of at all. Again, that's just, we're looking for middle tones at this point, nothing like a highlight. And heck, we can even start to do a little bit of a shift right here. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of turquoise in here. Now Eric says Lunar New Year is about done. To go to work tonight. Didn't get much hobbying done during the break. I would have liked. Yeah, that was. Well, let's see. When did we? Well, it is Year of the Rat, right? I believe, Year of the Monkey. For friends over at the Wingwa there. We've been going there for years and years and years, and they were kind of surprised when we wished them a Happy New Year. They weren't expecting that. I'm glad it's been fun for you and been a good idea to try. It's also going to be a nice little contrast to all of the orange, fiery glow type stuff. Here, let's make this maybe value 5-ish or so. Rope is still there. Yep, you're the rat. Because for me, the year ends in 8, and what is it? 68 to 70 is covered by the monkey. I think so. I could be wrong. Unless it's 66 to 68. Now the other advantage here of having lighting that's cooler on this side than over here is it's just naturally going to emphasize how much differential there is. Now, man, this looks like a highlight. What the heck? I will show you. Let's take some of this and mix white in there. I will just show you what a highlight would be. Bam. Look at that. So again, we are nowhere near a highlight stage. I mean, far from that, for sure. You can see I've got those grayed down colors. It means that I have those available to me when I'm doing stuff like this. So while this looks like it's more of an intense kind of a jade color, oh, that's the other favorite. That's the other. I knew there was another of the regular ProAcryls that I like a lot, and jade is definitely one of those. Heck, for me, it's almost. Now we don't want to offend faded ultramarine blue, but it's almost as much of a favorite as that. Oh wait, hey Gary, how's it going? Oh, it's really all you missed was me talking about the basing and stuff, and then laying out the object source lighting. So here is this is the base that I filmed earlier. I'll try and edit this probably tomorrow-ish or so. So either tomorrow night or whatever, you'll be seeing the video on this. It's the usual Green Stuff World flaming skulls, texture roller, that sort of thing. Where are we at here? So yeah, look at this. The impact that this has, this is nowhere near a highlight color. And yet everything that I've been able to build up so far is so much towards that darker realm that this almost looks like a highlight. But it's not. Here, let's get a little bit of... sneak a little bit of that into his tail over here. Now there's things that look like seams in the neck. Those aren't seams. They actually put... I'm guessing those are supposed to be sword marks, where he's been maybe chopped by a sword by some enterprising Greek hero. Here, let's get some of that out of there again. I love being able to use my big old filbert style brushes like this. Let's get a little more. You can see how much of the paint's got to come off the brush. Not a dry brush whatsoever. This is the point, and usually every painting video, where it's okay, here we're full blown into the shaded base coat part. So now we're shifting more towards purple here, because we've really been hammering away with the blue on the other side. Now we're going to shift away. So hopefully the thing with the skin grafts and that sort of stuff, maybe that the clamor for that has died down a bit. Because, nothing like making broken bones more complex by adding skin grafts onto the process. Sticking with keeping that faded ultramarine around. But since I have my mix so handy like that, it's like when I do flesh tones. You've seen me do that a million times. And I can get all kinds of neat flesh tone colors just mixing them myself. Because, man, we've been thinking back to the early days. Just circumstances have had us thinking back to those really early days when we first started doing this. And we did what we thought you're supposed to do. You buy skin colors, right? You buy the elf flesh, the dwarf flesh, the other flesh. We never used any of them for flesh tone, ultimately. They were horrible for that. They were absolutely lousy as flesh tones. Since I spent many years doing portrait painting, I said, maybe I'll just make my own skin tones. And, well, if you catch some of the Untamed Beasts tutorial videos that I've done, there's a lot of skin tone on those. I'm going to be doing the Splintered Fang series. That's going to be for the, probably Army Painting Series 17, 18, whatever the heck we're on now. I'll show you some of the figures that are part of the Army Painting Series. For me, since, well, I need armies to play Lord of the Rings and Warcry and Bolt Action and everything else, I figured why not film the process? And that's what I've done. Well, the Blood Bowl team, I just did the tournament this last weekend with the Lizard Men, and that was, what was that? That was Series 15. I actually got to use my board, only in the last game, unfortunately, but I did get to use my board with my matching bases, which made me happy. So here I'm going a little bit lighter with the faded ultramarine, and then look at this, I got my black here. Now it's a little more gray. See, there's almost a little bit of wet blending going on in there. And that looks like a seam, but it is not a seam. And again, not a dry brush, because we couldn't wet blend like this if that was just a dry brush. You can see we're shifting our colors here. We're back to more of a faded ultramarine, a little bit less of the jade color. So you can check out, well, it's on Facebook too, but see that Instagram address right there? If you want to see some of the stuff that gets painted on these live sessions, especially the army painting things, whatever, the dark sword stuff that I do for the Patreon page, go to the Instagram thing there and you see a host of pictures, as in a lot of them. So if this was, let's say this was just a standard, one of my usual videos that I record, we'd practically still be in stage 1 here. Typically, they're 5 chapters long. This is still essentially chapter 1. This is still shaded base coat. I consider this to be a base coat. There's not a layer of anything. This is me just figuring out, like this turquoise that started to work. I didn't think of this when I first was had this in my head, what I wanted to do with it. And I thought, yeah, what the heck? Maybe some turquoise could be fun. And like I said, there's still a ton of room, ton of space for me to go with getting things lighter here. Although, let's try now. Here, let's see if we can't mess around with some of this. So this is the blue fluorescent, and we just... so here's an example of some blue object source lighting there. That was the last live session. So let's put this out over here, like so. Now look at this. In relation to the other fluorescent, look at that. That's a big old chunk of fluorescent paint. Here, let's straighten out Mr. Palette. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of the faded ultramarine here. And again, look at the picture down. Nah, I need some more magenta with that. So I'm going to grab some of this. Set this over here. Aha. Okay, that's actually not terribly light. But what I want to do is this. And see if this is something that works for me or not. I have no idea if we're going to like this. I'm going to give it a shot. So that means also making their eyes that same glow. Look at that. This is incredibly dark, and yet, as I paint this on here, it starts to look really, really light. It is not light at all. Where's a couple other ones of the open mouth variety. Just let that work its way into there. I'm going to do this one now. So combination of a couple of different fluorescents and faded ultramarine blue. I did do, oh, it was the Nocturno Wizard. Oh, it was a couple of the Dark Sword videos. I did some purple and magenta glow on there. Those were really fun. As before, that's nowhere near a light color, but we are. Oh, we'll grab ourselves something a little bit smaller here. We'll grab a liner brush, and what we will do now is we're going to see how bright we can make this. Still actually have a touch of that purple, so there's a little bit of the faded ultramarine working its way in there. Let's get that where you can see it. Now Eric says, any chance of you getting the new Gazgul Thraka? You know, I actually painted the old one way back, the old giant metal one. I didn't actually see the new Graka there. Actually, there's some, well, the new flash gets and burn up. I think we've got most of the eyes now. Again, not really concerned about final eye. Oh, we got some eyes here to do yet. All I'm trying to do is just get some paint shoved down in there. That's tricky. I had to sneak that brush down in between 3 different heads. Like I said, some of these you're just not going to have a very easy time seeing what the heck I'm doing. And I apologize for that, but this is kind of a complex thing here. The only reason I wear a glove is, see where my hand is touching this? That would just get kind of greasy stuff here, and I wouldn't be able to paint over it. The other thing is, too, on camera, you don't want to see what that does to the camera right there. And you see how my glove has no effect on it? That's pretty much it. It's to protect the figure a little bit, but also it's to give the camera something a little less volatile to focus on than my skin color. I noticed that right away because I was using the gloves when I was working on vehicles and stuff because, well, vehicles, you know, you're making a mess and everything else, and you don't want to be touching the vehicle with your hand and getting the oil on that. And then when I started working on smaller figures, wow, yeah, okay, here, let's get some of this brighter stuff going here. So it's the weirdest thing because, well, essentially where's the lightest area? It's in the deepest recess. It's kind of the opposite of what you're used to seeing most likely. Yeah, let's do this guy over here. Oh, hey, Engineer to Draw, how's it going? But and actually, welcome, Gianquilo. I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah, if you're new, I try and do these as often as I can, which is typically 2 to 3 a week. And I try to have these sort of tie into what I'm doing with the Patreon videos too. Sometimes, say an older series, like some of the old Lord of the Rings series from series 4 and 6, I try to add on to that. Now, let's get some of this purple in here. So we've got a little bit of a darker version of our light, a darker version of our light color. And I'll still get even lighter as I go down into the faces there. I just don't know how much of that you can see. So that might be some things that maybe I just do those off camera or whatever, because I try to put in as much value as I can in the time allotted. So see how I'm able to, that's basically wet into wet blending right there. And the other reason I'm doing that, let's darken this down a little bit, is I wanted a second type of object source lighting. Oh, so Janquilo says, did you ever get to the video on painting your first ever MIDI? That's on the Patreon page right now. I didn't know how it was part of a collaboration, and I found out about it about 3 days before the thing was supposed to be done, so I had no idea about that. And they said, "Oh, Jim, what about this?" And I went, "Oh, okay. I'm gonna put that up public." What the heck is today? Tuesday, probably Wednesday or Thursday. I'll make that one public, and then people can see that. It wasn't my first ever, because those miniatures don't exist. Yeah, those unfortunately those are long gone. My first ones, but this one, it goes back 20 years. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of our miniatures they end up going other places, so we don't have quite as many as most people do. So see, we're starting to reflect on there. So now we're getting ourselves a couple of different types of object source lighting in here. That's why I'd sort of recommend, you know what, do a little bit of a reference search when you're looking for inspiration or ideas or something like that. Now, doing the bolt action stuff, obviously I have to research that, so that's a different story. Or say like the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, the Hellboy stuff. In a way, it's almost like I'm doing bolt action stuff. I have to research it. So I'm kind of, now I'm definitely glad I just said, you know what, the heck with it. I am going to do the glowy stuff in their mouths. Make it look, well, I've seen so many pictures of these guys actually breathing fire. Well, heck, that's what they're supposed to do. So maybe this now hopefully looks a little bit more like they are actually breathing fire. Oh, Engineer to Draw says not in a blood bowl, but the lizards were. Yeah, actually, well, it would really work. Let's see, is the blog? No, yeah, see that blogspot.com that just floated by? If you go there, you'll see my entire Lizard Man army, including the display board, all the pieces of terrain that I made for it. That was my first Warhammer army, and boy, I love those guys. I scratch sculpted huge parts of it. My engines of the gods, those were sculpted all from scratch. That's actually something that I was hoping to add at some point this year, was some sculpting videos. I think what I'll do is do some conversion ones, because I need to convert some of my Easterlings into some special characters, and I also need to convert regular Rohan cavalry into Royal Guard. So that's probably going to be my first chance to do any kind of, well, aside from base sculpting. Oh, Jen Kilo asks, I can't wait to watch that video. Recently got started in miniature painting. Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words there. Yeah, it's, well, gosh, when was it? In the early 2000s. Well, we really started in 2001, but 2002 is when we were introduced to the idea that we had no clue what the heck we were doing, because it was at Convergence at a convention here in the U.S., and really nice guy named Pete Lee. He introduced us to the cool mini or not, and this is when it was really about miniatures. He introduced us to that, and he showed us what actual basing was. So if you're wondering, like all this type of basing that I do like this, it is a direct result of being shown that we had no freaking clue what we were doing. We didn't even know you could paint the sand and gravel. We were buying sand and gravel that was basically a particular color and just leaving that. And as soon as we saw his stuff, we said we have no clue what we're doing. But that was actually a strong, very well, super powerful motivator in rectifying that situation, and I just became obsessed with basing ever since. So sometimes I guess you need the kick in the head for inspiration. It's definitely not that fun getting the kick in the head, that's for sure. I need to actually extend the light onto this here too, I think. Yeah. Well, heck, even this whole shaded base coat. You've heard me talking about it for a good. Well, it looks like this all just kind of started over again in my timer, but I'm going to say hour and 20 minutes. Been talking about that shaded base coat, that Lizardman army, and you'll see it if you look at the blog post there. You'll see that that is what started the whole shaded base coat thing. Because I had to paint hundreds of skinks and Croxigores, and each unit was a different color. So it wasn't enough to just make 200 turquoise skinks. Well, 20 of them were turquoise. Another 20 were more red and green, or red and yellow, whatever they were. So those all changed. Now I mixed a little bit more of my purple in there. We're going to get into these eyes now and try to fill in some slightly darker stuff around the edges, and then I'll go back into the eye and lighten that up. Like I said, none of this is any kind of a finished coat whatsoever. We're just trying to figure out, what do I want to do with these eyes? Do I like them to be glowing? I'm just going to say yeah. I'm just going to say the heck with it. We will make them be glowing eyes. And we still got that fluorescent blue there. A touch of the purple's going to work its way in here. More of the blue. I mean, that's all of a sudden now it looks quite dark. Yeah, we'll throw a little bit more of this here. So, engineered draw. Looking forward to the. I'm working on several. So this is the most current series right now. This is the Harad, and we're using the Green Stuff World paints. So I try and do, and see the sand here. See how he's kicking up that sand? That was something I hadn't tried before. So we did a whole new type of basing here. We're using a whole new type of paint. You can see I worked out the freehand patterns and such. So that is Army Painting Series 16. Either the numbers are 17 and 18, could be interchangeable, but we're going to be doing the Dol Amroth because, well, that's one of my new armies for Lord of the Rings. And we've got Splintered Fang for Warcry. I've got the figures prepped for the Ossiarchs. And there's going to be a few series on the Ossiarchs. No doubt about that. Definitely going to be multiple series on the Ossiarchs. Just like we did. Just wanted to mention this. I'm going to turn this around so you can see it. So we had a lot of the magenta there. Remember how we shifted things, turquoise and that, whatever? Well, now we're starting to shift some of this towards more of just a purple color. Because if it's all just that magenta, it will get boring just like on their necks. So I'm shifting some of this color to purple from the magenta. Then there's Sisters of Battle. That's going to be another series. basically I try and prep figures when I can, and because I want some of the series to be oils, and I try to show a different material or a different type of basing technique, that can sometimes impact the order that they happen. But there is plenty of army painting series. Oh, and, well, gee, Golden Demons, not that far away. So the idea is to do some, basically film some episodes as I work on entries, some of which will probably start out as an army painting series, and then I'll just carry them further. Because I know you've heard me talk about practically every series. You hear me say things like, well, from this point, you can, how much time you want to put into things or how much time you have, you can do more. It's basically how much more do you want to render those or just continue to refine. Well, the idea is to maybe take some army painting things and then refine those further, maybe into entries for Golden Demon. See, now we're look at this. Those faces there, we're starting to get more into the blending part of things. And it's all just, think of these as initial stages here. Nothing fancy whatsoever. All we're trying to do is figure out, well, do we like the, I'm really glad I did the glowing mouths, I guess we'll call it that. I wasn't sure at first. I had no idea if I was going to like those or not. But definitely, yeah, I'm pretty excited about those moving forward. And just, I think probably this week we are going to be adding, oh my gosh, many hours of new tutorials on the Patreon page. So you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of, oh, I had to do a recalculation. I think by the end of this week we could be closer to 300 hours of tutorials if you do the Army Painting Pledge level. And that's been scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. And it's very much like this, except it's carried over. Now, for cavalry figures, maybe a half a dozen. The Morgul Knights, has a half a dozen of those. But in the case, let's say I do the Ossiarch Infantry, there's probably going to be a good dozen, 13, 14 of those, whatever. To show you different things you can do with the basing, that sort of stuff. Here, I'm going to drop the brightness down a bit now that we've got our light stuff going here and all of the fluorescent paints starting to impact things. So again, he's casting this light here. I'm going to go back to my somewhat darker color there. And I'm just going to, again, make some notations here. A little bit, again, he's going to cast some light on the back of his head. It's going to make the back of the head more interesting. Guess what? Over here, I think we need just a hint of it. If we're going to have the kind of lighting from below, we also need it from above. Again, not a dry brush whatsoever. As you can see here, we're holding the brush. We're not doing this. If I'm get this death grip, I can't even reach it. Can't even get there. So we do this. We just kind of cradle the brush. Do a feathered brush stroke like this. Look, I'm even further away. Backing up even more. Look at that nice soft brush stroke that I can get, which is not a dry brush. Oh, I need to get a little bit of this over here too. Now here, nothing to catch that reflection, so it's really all about I'm going to say this one needs to reflect a little bit over here. Not much, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Oh, let's get that interesting place for a tooth to be pointing, but we'll deal with that anyways. Here, let's get some more of this light on the side of his head here. And I'm just gonna see as I add more of the no, it's transparent, but more of the fluorescent blue. It just starts to get a little bit darker. It shifts away from the magenta. Aha, this head also is going to need some. I'm not sure you can see it. Oh, yeah, you can see it. See that? Just popping that. Now you know why I didn't get straight away too worried about what colors the heads were, or at least as far as the lighter tones, because something told me that if they had their flame or whatever, some light spouting out of their mouths, it was going to impact the heads in some way. So just think again, if I had done all of that complex stuff, painted just one head at a time, there's no way I would have been willing to screw around with something like this. Some kind of effect like that. No way. No way I'd be wanting to do that. And again, what looks like a very bright highlight here is not a bright highlight whatsoever. Here, let's get some of this light on the back of his head too. So you can look at the difference between that orangey stuff. Oh, let's see. So painting along with the dark sword stuff to try and pick up and the color theory things. Yeah. The dark sword ones are kind of neat because they let me focus on, well, like you say, the color theory thing. So I think we did a dark sword episode where it was about greens, another one about blues, another one about reds. And I think we've done a dark sword episode on just about every type of object source lighting and that color. That's where that was the first place where we tried the paper butterflies or the vellum butterflies. Remember those? That was fun. And Evil Elvis is in the house. This is actually I'll go back to it. It's not a bad time to review. This is from Footsore Miniatures. It's a brand new Kickstarter that is out now. Bing, there we go. So it's Mythic, Moral Gods Mythic. And obviously there's some of the other stuff there. You can see the size and scale. A lot of the, what would you say, the Harryhausen, right? Movie type of a theme. And actually, Footsore Miniatures, they, for the most part, done historicals. And I've used their historicals. Heck, I was even thinking about using some of theirs for Lord of the Rings. Especially things like Rohan. And even potentially Dunlendings. That whole kind of Northman look there. And I know I've painted at least a couple of the Footsore. Oh, I don't know if were they the Picts or were they the Celts. I think it might have been some of the Celts. I think this will be painted in a couple of sessions because, well, he's got a whole bunch of heads. Now this, since so this was, I filmed this for the Patreon page. This is the base he's going to go on, and you can see all these flaming skulls here. That's what's providing the light that's reflecting up onto him here. Alright, let's keep going with let's just keep building this up in here. You can see, wow, that really is, I can see all the different tones that are there. Some that are more magenta, some that are a little less. But again, the theme was that reference that you see on the lower right hand corner. That's what I was kind of after. And I think that was sort of a fun choice there. Now let's go. Let's bring this in a little bit more. We're going to do some gonna work the opposite way. We've been adding lights and lights and lights. Oh, hey, Will. How's it going? Good morning to you, too. We are going to keep going here with our and the footsore miniatures on the Mythic Gods Kickstarter. And we're just doing again, see a little glaze over there? Just a little bit of a glaze. I can wipe some of it away. I could use my sponge if I wanted to. Here, let's go over here for some, that's that transparent purple and the transparent black. And we're going to reintroduce some really dark darks, just doing it in a bit of a glazing fashion here, and all it is just water. Nothing fancy. I'll just wipe away some of that excess there. And you can see how we're kind of pushing the paint along there. Instead of layers and layers and layers of progressively lighter paint or whatever, sometimes starting in the middle and working your way out. Look at that. Because you can see the difference between here and now. And obviously that's a little bit glossy, so it might be hard to see because it's wet. We'll do another little glaze in here. Same thing. Do that over here too, like so. Oh, it looks like the color scheme of Disney Hercules Hydra. Well, maybe is that thing in the lower right hand corner then? No, wait a minute. There was some very cartoonish like Hydra pictures when I was looking for my references. There was some cartoonish Hydras that popped up. Maybe that's the one. And we'll say, oh, back from a stag do. Everyone made it back in one piece. Yeah, that doesn't always happen. There are times where some are left behind. You can't always bring everybody home. Yeah, let's get some more of these dark glazes. Let's keep going with that. And all of a sudden, what looked so dark before doesn't look just like before. Things that looked so light, turns out they weren't quite so light. Let's wipe some of that away again. I got sponges here. I could use those. And now some of the object source lighting we've been doing on the faces, that starts to take hold. I'm going to have to put some light colors in those nostrils too. If they're breathing fire, well, they can't have dark nostrils. But basically, I'm starting to make it more like the faces there and the reference picture as we get some more of this dark in here. So yeah, even his mouths, the mouths that are closed, there's still some light color that shows through in there. So we'll do that too. Oh, which means I'm going to look for a smaller brush here, and we'll get some of our lighter stuff like that. In you go. And I gotta think about those nostrils too. Now that one I'm gonna have to wait for that one to dry, I think. So we'll do this other stuff first here. We can do these other ones that don't have our glazes in them. They might get wiped out too as I do glazes around those, but at least they're there just to remind me what's supposed to happen with them. Let's get this one too. Flip them around. Let's do some more of these. Yeah. That I'm really glad. I wasn't sure, and this is why Like I said, this is why you do it as early as possible, because even I was wavering on a concept. I just happened to see that picture. Now, of course, the sculpt is very different than that picture. So it's okay, that works well on that picture. Is it going to translate to this sculpt? It doesn't, it's no guarantee that it will. Now I've got some lighter color. I want to get some on the inside of the teeth here. Engineered dry, so we ever be doing any classes in the UK. The only way I can really make that work is part of, well, and we actually talked about this in the last live session, is some kind of, well, if I go to Australia, I'd have to be kind of part of a tour where we hit multiple places, and the idea is we kind of stay with people that we know. We've actually had some offers from folks to say, look, if you're in Germany, you can stay with us here. There would, now I don't have the time to plan that sort of thing. I have less than zero time to plan that, but there's folks that we know who actually sometimes do a little bit of a European, or they at least go over to Europe and such. So maybe we just partner up with them. It certainly would be an interesting thing to do. I mean, heck, there's an awful lot of things that I would like to see, that's for sure. So maybe that is something that we can do at some point. Actually, that was one of, there were several reasons for the Patreon thing, but that was one of the things we had hoped to do, was facilitate that. So instead of, because right now the vast majority of income still comes in through commissions. And actually that's why I try to combine wherever possible, say, commission stuff with making videos. Now let's get this last one over here. Essentially trying to let the teeth sort of pick up some of the light that's being emanated from the deep recesses of his mouths, or mouths, whatever. Yeah, let me just, again, look at how I'm able to hold the brush way back on the handle and still able to get the control that I need on it. So yeah, I'm blocking the palette camera, but my hand's got to go that way. Here, let's get even a little more light down in the recess here. Yeah, look at this. See, as I add that now, let's do this on the other faces. This guy here too, and then we've got the top one. Now some of the spikes are sort of like there, it's getting stuck on my gloves, so if the thing doesn't move quite so smoothly, that is why. Alright, there we go. Oh, we got this. Wow, those are some deep recesses there. Oh my goodness. That is some very deep recesses to try and get these brushes down into on these mouths. I mean, obviously it would be very easy if they were just closed. But yeah, we didn't quite go the easy way. Gonna add a little bit of my magenta in here. Let's do that on his tongue. And here. Yeah, we need to do this. So if we're going to put the glowing stuff on the teeth, we certainly have to have some kind of a light on their tongues. Gonna get some more. Yeah, there we go. And I'm looking at that reference in the lower right hand corner, and I saw that definitely there was some in these little gaps here. There was definitely some. Oh, look, here's another one. Eventually, I'll get all of these covered here. Now, the brush that I'm using here, it's a here, so it's a Winsor Newton, but it's Cotman, so it's artificial. It's not a sable. It's a synthetic, and you know me. Most of the time I'm using a synthetic brush because they're more robust. They take the kind of pounding that I'm most likely going to deliver to those. And that's important. You have to match the brush to how you work, because people can say, "Oh, get these brushes. They're fantastic." And well, we've tried it. We've been sent brushes or given brushes, whatever, and I've had to say, I don't know if you want me to say what I'm going to say about those. But it was for me, they didn't work. And then there's other people that absolutely love them because that's the way they work. Not really into laying down hard and fast rules. Oh, you must always do this. Now, sometimes there's, well, in the case of basing and you're using some sharp tools, there's some safety things that I kind of say, here, you want to be doing this. And then obviously there's certain fundamental truths like, well, if you want to have dark, you must have light, and the other way around. That's kind of the physics of light. You can't work around that. That just sort of happens. Wow, there's another one I still have to get. And you certainly can't see where I just put that stuff. Looking to continue adding my lights in here. Man, I didn't know if this was going to work at all, and I didn't know how long I'd be able to spend on, say, that portion of it. But it's definitely been fun. Here, let's take... Oh, we're going to get this white over here. Because we've added plenty of the... There, that's it. Just a little more of the fluorescent blue there. And let's go into these eyes, because while the center portion, obviously that's going to be light, we have to get some a little bit darker around the edges of these. So that's what I'm doing here. Oh, this one too. And we'll just keep moving down the line here. Certainly that one needs some darker tone. Now once I've got these darker tones in there, then I can start working the other way. And it'll make a pretty substantial difference. I'm just trying to... I'm more interested in just getting the paint where I need it down into the recesses, and then worry about cleaning it up later. Here, let's get an... Yeah, we need... Oh, there's some teeth here that those need to be lit from the interior too. It was just... Boy, it's hard to reach. Now, let me pop a little bit of the magenta in here. Go back towards the eyes here. And now, yeah, they're going to have a little bit more of a glow to them because we actually went back in and did some darker stuff there. And this is still not white. We have not... No white has been harmed. Well, at least not in a certain way. That is the thing. You try and just... stay away from that as long as you can and leave that as your sort of your ace in the hole. Where you really, really need it, then you've got it. Especially true for, well, object source lighting, non-metallic metals, that's for sure. You're going to want to hang on to that particular ace. And now we can get in the nostrils here. That lighter tone. So obviously the next live session I'll be really focusing in on the skin colors and, well, the teeth and that sort of thing. And as I mentioned before, the base that goes with this, I've already recorded the building process of that and the painting process. That's something that will be also recorded for the Patreon page. And that, well, let's just say there would be no army painting tutorials if it wasn't for that. Because otherwise I'd have to just be doing commission things, which means I would not be painting armies or playing them. And it's just like I used the Lizardmen in the tournament this weekend. Well, I'm certainly using my Lord of the Rings armies. The goal is to be doing battle reports. They might start out as just pictorial at first, just to make things a little bit easier for me. Probably have to do like a narration type thing. We're sort of filming stuff around because, well, obviously Kathy is doing her live streaming, and we're essentially trying to set up an area for both of us. And actually the ultimate goal is to maybe have both of us on at the same time, kind of an evening with the Wappels sort of thing. Wouldn't be quite so much of a lesson like, say, this is. Maybe all we're doing is just putting together miniatures or just painting some terrain or whatever. But something where we can just sort of hang out with you guys. Yeah, now we're going to start to get some lights here on the undersides of the skin there. Oh, let's see. Painting white boogers. Yeah, think of them as very hot glowing boogers. Because that's kind of what they are. I would imagine they're hot. I mean, I'm not going to touch them myself. But I am going to keep getting the lighter spots on those eyes. And like I said, I will go back, do more refinements later on. But you can see how we were able to really start to establish all our different types of lighting. Oh, let's get some more light stuff here on the underside of that part of his face. And yeah, the interior there, I didn't even see his cheekbone there. We got some more lights to do on this side. Like here. And in there. Another one here. Well, Kathy's doing her usual live stream tomorrow. There. And we're looking at, it's not really 2 hours of actual painting time right now, because there's been pauses to show things and that sort of the usual. But in roughly around 2 hours of painting time, we went from nothing but primer to this, We had no darks on here whatsoever. Nothing that was dark. Maybe let's get to, yeah, let's try, go back to some middle tones over here. Again, back to the faded ultramarine. This is where things get kind of fun. Now remember, purple and green together, they can sort of make a gray. There we go. Sorry, the palette camera keeps getting nailed. Or Hot Snot Hydra. Picking Hot Boogers should be the name of this stream. Yeah, that, and what was the other? Hot Snot Hydra. That's well, I don't know if you'd want to really drink something like a Hot Snot Hydra, but it, speaking of your bachelor party there, you challenge somebody to a drinking contest of Hot Snot Hydras. I don't really know what would go into a beverage like that. Not quite sure. Probably something I'd be less prone to actually wanting to consume myself. Alright, let's do a... I needed to get some tighter edges here around some of these eyes. Let's do that real quick. Just make quick work of that. Actually going to take my purple and green together here. That should make an interesting dark. A little more of that green. Just kind of focusing on this head here right now because it's just, I think it's easier for you to see. And I just want to see what I can come up with. How light do I want to go with those midtones? See, I got a little bit of the touch of that blue in there. So a little bit of a preview here as to what we probably would be working on in that next session. Oh, let's get some lighter colors up on his, on the eyebrow there. Again, I'm just faded ultramarine blue is essentially my highlight color, but man, it looks so light, but it is not that light. So Arox has had to step away for a minute. There are upcoming conversion videos. Yeah, that's the idea is I need Royal Guard for my Rohan army. So I'll just take some of the regular horse guys and change those into Erkenbrand's unit there. And Easterlings, I need a Dragon Knight mounted and a War Priest. And they just, well, GW makes those, but I am not going to spend, I think it's $40 for a fine cast one. That ain't happening. When I could have a whole bunch of fun just converting one myself, and it will be my own. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, see the difference here between this head and that head? Oh, thanks, Juan. Appreciate it. Welcome aboard. Oh, and Evil Elvis Fireball. Well, it's yeah. I've heard of that. Actually, yeah. I ran out of my usual. Oh, what was it? The blackberry ginger ale that I typically mix in with the gin. I actually had to use a. It's a sort of a. It's a cherry cola, but it's made by Sprecher, so it's. I mean, the sugar is actual sugar in there, so it is. It's almost a little bit like the blackberry ginger ale. So yeah, this is pretty fun here. So I'll just have to be doing this a whole bunch of times. Now, let's play with something like this. So we got that green going here. Let's see what happens. I need it darker. Now I could just take the jade, or here, like that's the Achillean green. That's the contrast paint. So again, we're doing a little bit of preview of what is gonna maybe be happening on the next session where we're painting these guys, this guy. Just again, looking for some different colors in here. So yeah, we're getting the turquoise in there. Let's go back to some of our purple there. Just puts me in mind of the big old Reaper five-headed dragon or whatever, where I basically just took purple and green and painted the entire thing with it, but it looked gray. And it also had, oh yeah, it had the fiery reflections on it too. What do you know? Yeah, let's get some of this darker tone in it. Wow, it's so dark, and yet I was so effective at getting darks in there early on. Boy, man. Oh, Eric is working on his first conversion for a collab video. Yeah, actually, you can check out the blog again for some of the armies where there's just tons of conversions and scratch building. What was the other thing I wanted to do? Oh yeah, take any leftover Ossiarch bits and somehow getting some Primaris Marines and basically making my own chapter there using those extra Ossiarch bits and putting those on the Space Marines or whatever and seeing what kind of fun stuff we can come up with iconography wise, whatever. So that's another thing that's coming up. Here, let's go with a nope. Nope. Almost went with the purple there. I want to go with more of a bluish dark. It's basically blue liner for those of you that know what blue liner is. That's pretty much what I made right there. And that's what we're going to put into our darker crevices here. Still waiting on the Chimera colors. Still wish that whole shipping thing hadn't been kind of, well, botched by the post office. That was most unfortunate. There, now we're going to go back into some darks. Again, you must have dark if you want to have light. And that's what we're trying to do here is pop in some darks. And the thing of this is basically a color test for, it won't be exactly what all the other heads are painted like, but it's basically figuring out, okay, which parts are going to be like this. Does it get to be lighter? If it gets too light, it's not going to allow the glowing stuff in his mouth to show up. The teeth, do I bother trying to make those maybe a more of a tooth-like color, for lack of a better term? Oh well, I hope I know it's gonna be fun for me, and I'm really looking forward to having a dragon knight again on horseback. And Evil Elvis is making the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. That's always a fun one. Somewhere we have Kathy's painted Balrog, so geez, that could be in a scenario. Of course, we have. Well, we don't have any dwarves at all. We do have the Fellowship, though, the original metal miniatures. And I'm pretty sure she had messed around with some Moria goblins, too. Yeah, I think she did. That terrain is very fun. I've got what is that, the Rohan house, right? And what I want to do is just assemble that and then use it for scale so that I can make a whole bunch more of them and of bigger structures myself, just out of the usual cheap foam and paper and everything else that I like to use that is, well, cheap. So again, if I get too bright with highlights here, well, then what's glowing is not going to look like it's glowing. But I think you can see the difference in these two heads right here. So this one is just where we had it, and now we're starting to develop this one more just to see what we want to do with that. There. Let's get a little bit more of this in the neck here, and I'm going to go back into this sort of turquoise mix. I know he's showing up on the palette cam too in a kind of a guest appearance there. There we go. Oh, Trivers, how about a Balrog done with those new... Yeah, well, let's... do we have a... No, we don't have a Balrog, but I've got, well, things that are close. I've got the Creature Caster, King of whatever he is. The one that I did is a Fire Demon, so I was thinking of using the golden acrylics on him. Well, in combination with the transparents. Neither of things I had back when I painted the first one. Now, large critters that I have for Lord of the Rings is a couple of fell beasts and a Mumakil. So yeah, those will be, I'll be painting those. The fell beast for sure. I want to paint that in oils. There's just no way I want to deny myself the fun of painting that in oils. I got to do that. This actually would have been really fun to do this in oils too, because all of this stuff that I'm doing here, that could be wet blended and lots of fun things like that. See, I'm going back in with some, yeah, some darker glazes here. It's just so handy with the transparents. All you got to do is just thin them down with water and go to town. Yeah, see, that's more of our bluish color working its way in there. Man, let's get along his neck here. See, a lot of this stuff on the chest, not quite sure you'll be able to see that no matter what. So just like that first head there, we're going to start to lighten this up a bit. Yeah, let's get the crazy tooth that just kind of is not part of his mouth. I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be more of a tusk or something like that. Maybe that's it. It's supposed to be more of a tusk. Ooh, let's see. I need some of my purple glow in here too, especially in this area. Yeah, let's go along with some of that texture. Yeah, trying to line it up with where his mouth is here. Let's get some of that on the back of his head, but maybe even a bit on the darker side. And that's the fluorescent blue and that magenta there. It'll probably take a little while for my, a week or so, for the golden acrylics fluorescent blue to show up here. I think I might actually just grab a drink here too. So I'm just trying to see if I can find... Aha, okay. That is something I wanted to see. You know what? I'm going to go a little bit here. Let's go a little bit brighter with this on the back of his head here. So we're lined up right here. Again, with his mouth over here. Let's see just how light do we want this to be. That's probably as light as I want to go with something like that lighting. And it stops there at that edge because, well, there's no way that would ever reach below that. Now, how far-reaching do I want that to be? I've sort of pushed the envelope on the lava type lighting there, so I'm going to have to do a similar thing. Not lava, but the fiery skulls, right? And wow, this is nowhere near white, but yet it still is impactful. And you can see the comparison, because this is actually dimmer than that light that's coming out of his mouth, and that's what we want, because one light source is right on top of us, like here, and the other one definitely from much further away. Oh, let me see if I can't inject a little bit of this purple in here. And boy, it looks so light, but it is not. It is most definitely not. So I got this turquoise mix again. Which, boy, it looks incredibly light here until I go onto the palette and I go, oh my gosh. It's not even as light as the faded ultramarine. That's how much darker it is by comparison. Now there's a lot of linear texture. It's more of a skin than it is, say, scales. So that's, what was that, instead of a dragon, the wyvern, however everybody pronounces that differently. Now I'm going to get me something to drink here real quick, just bear with me. Now, I'm going to grab a little bit of blue to go in there too. And I want to... Yeah, I'm just trying to get around these eyes here to really solidify what's happening there. How about underneath there? The faces, obviously any face that has an open mouth comes in two pieces. The nice thing is all of the necks are just one piece. There are some miniatures where just one neck is 5 pieces or whatever, and it's really, really difficult to manage that. When you got something like this where the heads are sort of wrapping around each other, so as far as resin hydras go, I have definitely had to deal with more difficult ones than this, so that was kind of nice. And again, this is from the Footsore Miniatures Kickstarter that is just started Sunday morning. Yeah, now I want to see what happens here with these scales. You can see I'm starting out with more of that muted purple tone. A little more of the muted purple here. And then I want to see what happens if I wander over here into my turquoise, because hey, I can. It's just sitting right here. That might be too much. So back to the purple again. So remember, not all that long ago, just a a matter of a few hours ago when we first hit this, and we took the purples and the blues and all the different transparent paints, and we just did those glazes. Now we're working in the other way. We're taking those same ProAcryl Transparents, and now we mix them with the lighter colors, and we can do some fun mid-tone type things like that. So see, I wanted to get a little bit of iridescence there too, in a way. Here, let's do some more light right here. There, right over his eye. We've got that tusk there, his sort of a beak, whatever. We will darken that down now a bit. A little more. And as I mentioned before, this will be a continuing project here. Now we've messed around with the heads there. Let's see what we can do maybe with some of our yellows. I haven't been able to do the twitch thing yet because I didn't realize this. There was all sorts of plugins and everything. I will try and do a test one if possible this week. Maybe over the weekend, possibly on Saturday. Actually, might be the first time I give that a try. Yeah, the more I think about it, might be Saturday. And it's just Wappelius, the Twitch channel. That's all it should be called. I do believe the W is capitalized. But I've got a bunch of some of my army stuff. Like, okay, I want to just paint a few more Army of the Dead. Well, I already have several. I have a whole army painting series on my Army of the Dead, but I have some other just like this live sessions. So it would be more of I've got a whole bunch of miniatures out here, and I'm just going to paint those because as I watch basically training videos for Twitch, and the way that I've watched dozens and dozens of YouTube training videos, I've tried to kind of model what I might want to do there on the Twitch channel, which would be, instead of me trying to go, okay, here's a figure, we're going to paint this whole figure in this one session. The Twitch thing would be more, well, it'd be more like what Kathy does, where it's sort of an ongoing type of a thing. More of a potpourri as opposed to okay, here is this, like I said, we got this Hellboy figure, or we've got a Marvel Crisis Protocol, or a Cruel Seas ship, and the entire thing gets painted in one video. Ironically enough, that's what I thought I was going to be doing with YouTube. But then it sort of morphed into actual lessons. So, yeah, I mean, you can do actually, I think I have 13 or 15 followers already, I guess, on the Twitch channel. I have no idea. I'm guessing that those will probably take place around this time, because during the day, well, Kathy's streaming, so there's your bandwidth. So if you wonder why I'm not doing them in the daytime, well, potentially the one on, say, Saturday could be done during more of a US friendly time. Now here we're along the part that's closest to where the source of the flames are. You can see we're starting to sneak in a few lighter colors here. Now that I've done a decent amount on those faces, I can go back to the fiery stuff over here. Like so. Again, focusing on the areas closest to where the flames are going to be. That's what Pelle's 2 L's in there, and I think everything else is right. Yeah, 2 P's, 2 L's. And actually, I can let you know because I will get an alert that you followed, or an email alert. So if I don't get that email, then I can tell you, oh, I guess it's not quite the right one. Although I can't imagine there's that many Wappelius out there. And I know there's differences between what followers and subscribers and all that. So it's even the language of it is so different from YouTube. Basically, as Kathy and I, we were coming home from her D&D session, and I told her that the YouTube stuff, if that is me having to say learn French or Spanish or whatever, trying to learn Twitch is more like Sanskrit or Chinese or Russian or something like that, something with an entirely different alphabet. Because it's similar but massively different. But I do think that the Twitch platform would be friendlier to, well, even something like this, where I would be painting in multiple sessions. Because with YouTube, it's harder for them to recommend part one, part two. Because even I've tried to do that with channels that I follow. And they do these multi-part episodes. Some of them are dozens and dozens of episodes, and it gets really tough, even in a playlist sometimes, to follow those. Now, I do have playlists. I'm not quite sure what playlist this one would go into. Maybe it would just go into the object source lighting playlist. I don't know if I have one, but it just might. So you might see multiple, or the same video in multiple places, or multiple playlists. I have playlists for certainly my Lord of the Rings figures. There's actually a Marvel Crisis Protocol playlist. There's a basing playlist, a Song Ice and Fire playlist. I can promise that there will be no music playing. Because, well, that's more than I want to deal with, and I would eventually like to take the raw video, because it's recorded just like this is, and I want to be able to maybe make a hard copy video out of it for YouTube later on. Let's say I'm painting multiple types of figures and I'm bouncing around between Lord of the Rings and bolt action figures. Well, I could just separate that out and maybe make some shorter videos out of it. So you can see it from that. Remember the initial framework that we did? See how we're starting to play off of that a little bit? It's definitely there. I know a few other people, they initially had trouble finding it, but they eventually they found it. So maybe ditch the capital W and try again with 2 L's and see if that works. And I think actually at one point I think he thought he hadn't found it, and then I told him, yeah, you have found it. So again, all of this, it's set up by having all that darker color stuff that we did early on. Yeah, that is, again, this was it's tough when someone is new and is not used to this approach, where it's kind of messy to start with. I mean, that's just how it is. It's because all we're trying to do is get some colors set down onto the surface as quickly as possible. Oh yeah, but that's the other thing too, because Kathy listens to a lot of other folks' streams, and I'll come in the room and it sounds like, well, a bunch of people in a room just screaming at each other sometimes because there's the music and all the other stuff going on. And well, I guess no matter what, you get muted as far as playback goes. And call me old-fashioned or call me what YouTube-centric, but I want people to actually be able to go back and watch those things. It's just like the blog. Here, let's find ourselves a few more. Yeah, some more reds in here. Same thing there. And that is some of the original color that we were using at the very start of this. Yeah, let's double down on this again. Yeah, let's do some more over here too. You notice I didn't really do much with the yellow. I focused more on that reddish orange there. See, here's another area that I've kind of left behind. So we'll catch up with that. And I will most likely, and I did that on some of these too. Where is she? You know, where you can see where I went back in and then darkened out some of the glow afterwards. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, what I'm trying to do is represent that this is casting a shadow here and sort of cutting off basically the fiery light that's coming from underneath. But now I got to bring that back. Just a bit of it backwards. We're watering that down. I'm trying to hold this so you can see it. Yeah, so I'm going to try and bring some of that back over here. Just slightly. And for folks that maybe are coming in here and haven't seen the last couple of hours, this is from Footsore Miniatures. And as part of their Mortal Gods Kickstarter campaign that just started on Sunday. And I'll do a quick review here of his base. So this was, again, a tutorial I filmed earlier today using a whole bunch of Green Stuff World products, texture roller, the resin pieces, the flaming skulls, and those flaming skulls, that is what's providing all of the light source here. I bet you there's some folks that maybe they left early because they weren't too impressed with what the fire looked like when we first started. If only they could see it now. Here, I'm going to go just a little bit more, but this, again, it's more of the reddish tone here. Not the yellow. You can see that. Remember that turquoise that I put? Well, now you can see it. The turquoise that I put over there. And let's do a little. Yep. See what it's just a little bit of a suggestion of it there. It's almost like it's a reflected light within an OSL reflected light. It's reflections and reflections. Oh, thank you very much for the follow there. Like I said, I think what would you say? The last couple of weeks, I've been watching. Now, this is the reason why it's complicated. So here, okay, I'm talking about color theory and these lights and darks and this OSL stuff. And imagine I all of a sudden started to talk about, I don't know, making souffles or something. It's that different of a environment because you're just, it's gamers. For the most part, Twitch wants people that are broadcasting games. That's why it's called XSplit Gamecaster. Not like the XSplit broadcaster that I use. But the whole notion of the original idea was to do this stuff on Twitch because, well, all right, I've been doing this for 2-ish hours, actually 2.5 hours. But for on Twitch, people are actually they are genuinely rewarded for staying the entire time. Whereas with YouTube, it's people just kind of take a look and go and leave. With Twitch, when you're in, you're in because well you're invested, and that's how the Twitch model works. Which is why, well, let's say some of the Golden Demon stuff that I'm working on, which, well, even for me, ain't going to get done in an hour or two. Those are, I think, the kind of stuff that'll happen on the Twitch channel. Heck, maybe even battle reports too. Is I've seen people doing live battle reports. I know Zorpa's been doing it. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the guys from either England or Scotland or whatever that are doing basically live Lord of the Rings battle reports. That could be fun. Yeah, just imagine there's a terrain table out here and there's dice rolling. Here, look at it. Now we're gonna just, yeah, look at how that just, see how that starts to glow, and then you've got this other glow, and we got glow all over the place. I got, oh yeah, that's right. Reaper has a Twitch channel. Well, basically, they haven't asked. So I don't know. Maybe if people say, hey, why don't you just ask Jim? I would certainly do it because, well, you saw those pictures on Facebook and Instagram. I just did a dozen Reaper Bones minis, and I would have loved to do them on Twitch because that would have been fun. I ended up doing them on a Styrene Syndicate hangout, so they were painted in front of people. Yeah, we had hoped. Actually, I was thinking of sending them a message saying, well, if you got any Bones Black stuff and you wanted us to paint it in, I don't know, something like this. I can't paint what I ain't got, unfortunately. But yeah, go check out well, for those that don't know, go to the Instagram thing and you'll see all the pictures of those Reaper miniatures in question. And so, here we go. Let's hope we not knock this down. So this, I believe this is actually Bones Black. This was another tutorial that I'm filming here for the Patreon page, and this will probably be brought to ReaperCon. But I'm going to do a mural back here, and then we'll have this thing painted. I do believe that's Bones Black. It's the only one I got that's Bones Black, unless the troll is also Bones Black. So let's get some more lighting under here. Yeah, I don't know what kind of technical hurdles await me for Twitch, but I will give it a shot. I mean, if anything else, I will have raw video that I can transfer in some form to the YouTube channel. Yes, all of those. Remember how I didn't mess around too much with shading these parts of the chest or whatever you want to call it, because I knew this was coming. That is again, another reason why I put the lighting down first or as early as possible. There we go. So yeah, this thing where I only have 211 drop frame for whatever reason, where the thing just goes bonkers. That is pretty much happening YouTube wide. We'll see if the same thing happens with with Twitch. But yeah, just that little bit of sneaky stuff working its way in there. I'm gonna try and march my way around this edge. Because I have quite literally hundreds of Reaper figures here. Now, I could pretty much do a Reaper miniature every day for infinity, and probably still not run out. I've been prepping those too. I didn't even know they actually asked other people to do them. I thought that was, what is it, Thursdays with Reaper or something like that? I thought that was their YouTube thing. Shows what I know. Yeah, see that? Now, we set in our orange. We're going to go back the other way now. Let me just get some junk out of the brush here. I get something to drink real quick. Give me a second. And yes, that was bright in your ears. I apologize, but it was necessary. Because if no sounds come out of my face, that's not helpful for you. So we got some of that purple now. And now we work the other way. So instead of me painting all these endless layers of, can you imagine? Well, no, I don't have to imagine because I used to do that. Is I would paint all of this stuff here instead of just letting my initial glazes be that middle ground, right? And then adding the fire and then the other. Well, I'm calling it reflected light. It's not reflected light. It's the actual light. But look at, see how we've got, look at that. It looks like there's hours and hours and hours of layering and blending and glazing and God knows what else people would do. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're doing this instead because this is easier and we'll finish things in our lifetime because that's always good. Well, okay, I see you're mentioning Bones 5. Oh, you need a bunch of subscribers. You got a partnership for Twitch. Yeah, well, there's all those goals, right? They actually, well, I think I'll accomplish one just by doing one stream. Like you have to do your first stream, and then you get a cookie. But then you have to do like a 4-hour stream. You have to get X amount of subscribers in a day. Then you have to, I guess, maybe gift a sub to somebody or something like that. There's all kinds of goals apparently, which I have not had much chance to read through those. Yeah, they certainly don't make it easy. But hopefully, in combination with the YouTube channel and that sort of thing, there's some cross-pollination and that accelerates that process a bit. So here is smashing into the palette cam. Yeah, what is the big turtle? Is that part of Bones 5, I assume? Because obviously GW has the big turtle for the sea elves or whatever they are called. But the Reaper one looked fun. I wouldn't mind doing a sort of a diorama base for that. Alright, I got some. I put in actually a touch of white in there. Now the thing is I can't have the ambient highlight here and the fiery glow be the same intensity. So that's going to be a difficult little balance there to manage. Here's a little more. Okay, now I'm going to take this. Ooh, and we're going to, just like we did, see how we got that brightest point there in the center. Let's see if we can't do a similar thing now with, essentially this is, well, for lack of a better term, this is the actual scale color, I guess, if you want to call it that, or skin color. Here, let's pop in a little more right in there. See that? So see how we've got the brightest part of the orange there, but then the brightest part of the, well, regular light. Oh, well, the Bones 5 is, to me, basically what I was trying to say is that You need to be people need to be able to paint faster so they can get all of those, because they still probably have 100 minis from Bones 2, and they're probably getting that many from Bones 5, and they're going to end up with a huge cache of unpainted figures. And hopefully some of the things that I espouse here can make people think like they can actually get those suckers painted. So here we go, look at that. So it looks now like we've got a 3D shape there, whereas remember before it was totally flat. There was virtually a flat color there. There was barely any shading, and it didn't take too much, not an extreme effort there to see. We even got a little bit of a glintiness going on. The Reaper Turtle was one of their most detailed already. Yeah, that one looked... I think I've seen a few of those painted, and that one definitely looked tempting. I would make a really neat diorama or something like that for sure. Because they got the fish dudes running around. I painted some of those. They got a bunch of nifty figures. So there we go. Look at that. And let's so say look it up here, and even that's what it looked like there. See that middle one where my finger's touching it? That is what it looked like. And now that's what we have with all kinds of fun shading on it. Now I'm going to go back into my greens over here, make a bit of a jade type of a deal going on. And unfortunately, you'll have a tough time seeing that. Tough time seeing that. But I want to get in here. Yeah. There we go. Can you see? Now you can. Woof. Now it's tough for me to see. Just like elsewhere, we're starting to now think about more in the mid-tones here. You notice I just went with more of a turquoise slash blue here, because if I'm going to have this magenta type of glow on at least the back of his head, I can't just have purple colors here. So we had to do something a little bit different there. Oh, Evil Elvis has the bones pile of shame. There is seems like everybody has those. I mean, we have a bunch of bones figures here. More so because, well, I was going to use those for teaching classes, but also when I was doing the Kings of War thing, I wanted to make, was it the Naiad Army or whatever? It was basically their version of the Sea Dudes. And I think I had gotten maybe the Kraken or something like that and some other creatures. Who knows? Maybe I'll still be able to do those. Sorry. It's been hours of talking, which is going to be murder on my voice. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing the classes at Adepticon this year. Because the last 2 years, my voice has basically been gone by Thursday, and that's not real useful. It's kind of the opposite of useful. Here, let's get some of this dark set into there. Let's see if we can't do a similar type of thing here. To try and distinguish, yeah. Because we've got some of the glow from underneath here. This is tricky. Oh, let's grab some of this red here. Nope, I'm going to mix that with some of this. Let's make it even darker here. Kind of almost a semi-glaze. Yep. That is what I needed. Needed a bit of a transition point here. And this is what I mean by making some of this darker. I'm going to take this. Can you see it? What really? Yeah. Yeah. That shows up in there. We will put some of that in here too. And think of this as a super controlled glaze, because it really is very watery. Now, let's say if I'm using contrast paints, let's go with something along the lines of Blood Angels, no, Flesh Tears red, and I think it's not Cassandora yellow. What is whatever the kind of orangey yellow contrast paint is. Actually, I need to get me a new jar of that. But here, let's right here. That's better. I need to actually have a light dark light transition here, and this now, see, we're going to add in that darker transition. See, that gets brighter by default. We didn't have to continuously add, well, more white, because what's white going to do? It's just going to make things chalky. It's going to kill your color. That's why so many of my videos that I do, especially that when I'm discussing anything like color theory, is just, well, you're not using white to lighten anything. At least not around me, you're not. You are going to use, if you're going to lighten reds, you're going to use yellows. You saw I've been using this faded ultramarine here as my light for pretty much most of this episode. Darn near 3 hours. Oh, Evil Elvis is working on a goth, painting it in the Dark Sword Gold Dragon Chaos color scheme. Oh, wow. You just mentioned Chaos. There's going to be a bunch of the creature caster demons popping up. Those would be, I think, really good potential Twitch type things, because, well, that's something where I want to be painting for, well, hours. So I think that is another possibility there too, as far as things you would see on the Twitch channel. Wish me luck though. Alright, look at this. We're going to get a little bit more of our... I'm going to double down on that. I'm going to go really dark here. That's some of our initial purple mix there. Put some of that in with that red. Try and find myself a few darks right in here. We're going to try and find some in here too. Except I do like some of that purple. It's a way to get the fiery glow, but without making this lighter. It's weird. I mean, it just seems like it doesn't make any sense. You say, wait a minute, how are you making your glow lighter by adding that insanely dark, by comparison, almost like a reddish brown there? But I can't keep adding light to that. It's just that much farther away, or further away, depending on how you're supposed to say that, from the light source. Here, we'll work ourselves a bit more into here. But you know, there's parts then where I'm saying, okay, not more with the reddish purple like this, but then that's when I kind of go in more into the turquoises and that sort of thing in the crevices. Here, let's go a little more with this. Really darken that down. Eula says, you have skill and work ethic. Well, thank you very much. That is appreciated. Because it's, when you do this, people do ask me sometimes, okay, Jim, you have won the lottery. You do not have to do any work. You're not insanely rich, but you got money to live on. What you gonna do? So I'm doing this. Except I get to keep all the miniatures. That's what's gonna happen. Well, and then there might be having a much larger house to not only store all the minis, but there might be the 6-foot by 8-foot gaming table that has sound piped in, and lighting effects to give the thing an ambient, like it's sunset or sunrise or something like that. I don't know, projected map overlays and that sort of thing. Just a few minor little treats like that. If there was infinite cache to provide for such things. I definitely want to get me some turquoise over on this. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that over here. So I get that right there. That is actually like a, I assume some kind of a wound or a sword cut mark or whatever. Back in my purple. So it's quite literally mixing purple and green together. And we're essentially making a turquoise out of it. Now let's do a little more there. So can you, yeah, you can see that there, and it's just a little bit like what we were doing there on his chest here. Now, I think you'll be able to see this. I'm going to take this same much darker coat, and my goal is on the opposite side where my flame is. That's just about what I was looking for. Yep. Now again, see where the brush is holding way back on the brush there. Now let's get a little bit lighter in there now. I think you can see it. Just follow where the brush is going, right into there. A little more. So see how we've got the bright orange on that side. We twist it. See how we're starting to get the lighter colors on the other side. But now, here's the other thing. We're not just changing the temperature, we're changing where that light's coming from. It's more from the top, whereas that's coming from the bottom. And it's, well, it only makes sense because, well, where's your lighting source coming from for the orange stuff versus this cooler light, which is essentially your ambient light. Let's do a little more there. Now, this chest area, I thought it could be interesting to paint. I was hoping it would be. And I knew at a certain point it would have kind of a very dramatic effect. From basically going like flat, like it was nothing, to all of a sudden, wow, look at that. And we're going to add a little more transition here. We're going to, so I can keep working in these lighter, cooler colors here. Let's do that along the way here now. Something like that. I'm just going to grab brush here, wipe it away. That's all it takes. There are some folks I've seen, they would basically strip the entire miniature after just doing that. It's like, I hope you're not serious about that. Now, see, look at how even just that one little just insinuation of a cooler color there, it starts to make the lava, not lava, I keep saying lava, it makes the fiery color that much more fiery. Here, let's hold it this way. See that now? Oh, now this, yeah, we're gonna go back and let's get some, again, purple and green together. We got the turquoise thing happening. And yeah, it's not terribly light, but there's some color here. We'll get some of that same turquoise over there. Let's do it again, adding a little bit of light to it. Let's not hit the face with the brush. Now I can only go so far up with that because, well, the neck starts to point downwards. Where's that light going to come from? Why the heck would it be so light there? So I know the head's kind of blocking this. Like I said, that's why some of these things will be, I'll just have to do some of that off screen. Here, let's, again, trying to put it where you can see it and I can still reach it. Oh, let's go back to our faded ultramarine. Just to lighten some things there and there. Just like we did on the other side. Look at what I'm doing here. So again, a little bit of a highlight right there. I think I will do a few more lights there. Another one there. Another one there. Yeah, see, now you've got, look at that, you got these two sort of opposing, warm versus cool, some more saturated versus the other. By virtue of adding green to the purple, it also follows in, that was at the Book of Wappel, Chapter 1, if a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere, right? Well, by adding the green in there, there's a little bit of red versus green, right? But we put the purple in there too, so now you're, in a way, tying the reddishness of the fire to the cool color in the flesh tone. See how weird color theory can get? Yeah. And those stupid color wheels just seem to make it more insane. Oh, thanks, Evil Elvis. Appreciate that. I hated the color wheel in art school. They tried to inflict that on us, and nobody understood what the heck was going on. And then when we just got into our regular painting classes in the next ensuing years, it all started to make way more practical sense. Because color theory is kind of like theory hammer in 40K or fantasy or whatever game. It's just a theory that usually falls apart as soon as the first dice is rolled. You can have those frameworks. I mean, like again, warm and cools. You're always going to have those, I guess, tools available as far as establishing contrast and that sort of thing. Here we're going to pop in one more light there. So look at how that, again, got the fiery, and then all of a sudden, boom, over to the cool light. Oh, let's go into here. Remember, we were doing the magenta light up here. We got light coming from all over the place, doing all kinds of things. There's light everywhere. It's insane. Oh, I think I need to get a touch of, yep, I need to get a touch of bluish, greenish light there. Now I need to also, yep, we need to, because this is not, that should not be facing down towards the orange glow. We need to subtract from that a bit. And I'm just looking at where that's facing, and I said, nope, too much. Got to take some away. Not hard. Actually, it's more like really easy. And just like we did further up the line here, we add some lightness to that center portion, and it makes these parts fade off a bit. But against that light, dark, and light again, it's just what we're doing is we're changing the color and temperature of the light, dark, light situation. Just like we did elsewhere, yeah, we can start to define more things. Huh, look at that. I'm looking at the one side of the face versus the other. That's pretty interesting. We got our magenta over there. So I'm going to have to lighten that up, I see now. I'm also seeing that I want to darken some things. We're going to take some of our, again, the ProAcryl Transparent black. We'll mix that with our purple and some of this other dark here. You really can't see that, so I don't think I'll mess around with that too much. But there's a little bit of fuzziness in there that I wanted to define a little more. Yep, it is 5 a.m., so I do believe that I am going to conclude for today. I really appreciate everybody that was in the house, and best wishes to Gary, and again, another shout out to Aaron and Liz there. Hopefully that things can get back on track for them after not a very fun day today. But this was very fun. Again, this is the Hydra here from Footsore Miniatures. This is their Kickstarter, and you can see, so we're doing a little bit of a different color scheme than what you're seeing over there. And I will do another session on this. If you want to, if you want to not miss that, or at least get the alerts for that, you do the subscribe thing, but also just don't be like me. Hit the bell for all notifications, because if you don't hit the bell, you'll be like me and find out about things, I don't know, a week after they happen. So that's not a bad plan. And if you can drop a like on this, that's also appreciated, because, well, it keeps YouTube happy. And hey, maybe you can even join me on my first Twitch stream, which hopefully will be this weekend, technology aside. But thanks again, everybody. Oh, thanks, Gary. And thanks, Eva. I always appreciate all the company. I will catch you guys next time.